in less than a year to 10. 4 of the escapes have occurred while inmates were outside the facility, either working or visiting family under the supervision of guards. It began last November 22nd when Ivan Cruz took off while attending a class at Guam Community College. Anthony Duenas pulled the same trick at GCC when he escaped during school hours on March 21st of this year. On March 5th, Edward Sablan walked off while working on the DOC farm. On August 1st of this year, Vicente Cepeda was on the lam for 16 days after getting away from guards while he was visiting his mother in Jonia. And a month later, on September 1st, just 3 weeks ago, Vince Tautau jumped the fence at DOC. He was out for less than a day. Chairman of the Judiciary Committee, Senator Pilar Lujan, today said that she will be impaneling her DOC Oversight Committee next week to discuss the number of escapes and conditions and other problems at DOC.
Authorities are also trying to track down those responsible for transporting a major shipment of marijuana through Guam. Customs officers seized it yesterday and displayed today what they say is part of a growing problem that faces Guam. Guam Customs officers hammered open this plastic miniature elephant containing marijuana for the media to inspect. It was among 8 elephant models, all of which contain more than 300 pounds of weed. The street value of that comes to about $180,000. Customs had seized the pot during a routine inspection, thanks in large part to their canine dog going wild when he came to the elephants. Commerce Director Peter Barcina says his customs agents also find these types of shipments unusual.
When it's packaged and concealed within like a figurine or a carving, these are your standard commodities or products that we normally inspect because of its source or origin.
The shipment on Continental Airlines had come from the Philippines. It was headed for Chuk. And since Chuk has no market for these types of products, Customs became even more suspicious. The seizure represents what Barcina says has become a growing problem from the Philippines with marijuana.
We've recently seen an increase in shipments of marijuana shipments coming through this port of entry. I think this one shipment also confirms that both air and surface vessels are being utilized.
To crack open this case, authorities say they hope to track down the person in Chuk who's supposed to pick up this shipment. And a footnote, Barcina says his people find more violations at the airport than the commercial seaport when it comes to these types of drugs coming in. He says that stems from the heavier volume of traffic by air. A 29-year-old Jigo man died early this morning after the car in which he was riding slammed into a concrete pole. Jun Chul Choi was pronounced dead just after 5 this morning at Guam Memorial Hospital of a massive skull fracture. Police spokesman Officer Ray Fernandez says Choi was in the front seat of the Toyota Tercel and was headed eastbound on Marine Drive in Jigo. Now, it happened around 11:30 last night when the driver, 36-year-old Song Hong Gun of Jigo, said he lost control of the car. Gun was not injured. The other passenger in the car, 25-year-old Chai Sik Lim of Jigo, received a broken leg and multiple abrasions. Fernandez says Gun was arrested and charged with reckless driving with injuries. He is being held at the Rosario Detention Center in Manilao. Fernandez says the accident is still under investigation.
During a bail hearing this afternoon for Surveyor Tommy Anderson, prosecutors revealed that they have evidence that Anderson's girlfriend has taken a large sum of money from Guam to Korea and is investing that money there. Anderson, of course, has been arrested on charges of stealing public land. The revelation today in court came during questioning by Judge Janet Weeks over Anderson's assets, and there was a lot of confusion over just what Anderson's assets are. Anderson contradicted himself at least twice on the question of how much money he has, and he provided even more questionable statements to the court about whether he tried to flee when investigators tracked him down in Saipan. Anderson and his new attorney, Mike Phillips, were in court to request a reduction in Anderson's $1 million cash bail. Phillips took over Anderson's case last Friday after David Lujan resigned for unexplained reasons. Phillips asked the court to reduce Anderson's bail from $1 million cash to $100,000 surety, the surety being a property owned by Anderson's brother. Phillips said Anderson does not have $1 million in cash or property. He said that Anderson had only $500 in Citibank and $1,000 in Union Bank. Yet that statement of his assets was contradicted by Anderson himself at least twice before the court today. First, prosecutor Andy Bonham pointed out that the government has information that Anderson was seen withdrawing a large amount of money from the Bank of Guam earlier this month, and that Anderson's girlfriend, Chin Wirtz, a Korean, is now in Korea making investments with that money there. Phillips then said that the money Anderson was seen withdrawing from the Bank of Guam was only $10,000, and it was for a business investment in Saipan. Bonham then asked, how could Anderson's assets be only $1,500 if he admits to withdrawing $10,000? After consulting with his client, Phillips said that the $10,000 Anderson withdrew from the Bank of Guam was not for an investment after all, but was to pay bills and taxes, and that Anderson in fact says he has $3,000 left. Again, Bonham countered, how can he have $3,000 left when he has already told the court he has only $1,500? It doesn't add up, said Bonham. Bonham also said that Anderson was a flight risk and that he tried to avoid arrest before he was apprehended in Saipan on September 14th. Bonham said that after investigators contacted Anderson at his hotel and asked him to voluntarily surrender, Anderson agreed. But then he suddenly checked out of the Pacific Gardenia and into the Tropicana Hotel under the name of J.A. Cruz. As Judge Weeks pointed out, that name is like John Doe. Again, through his attorney Phillips, Anderson first explained that he merely took over a room reserved by someone else named J.A. Cruz. But that story changed too. Upon further questioning, we learned that Anderson and someone else checked into the room, and that someone else used the pseudonym J.A. Cruz. It was a romantic liaison, according to this explanation. At this point, Bonham produced the registration form from the Tropicana Hotel, showing that only one person, and not two, had checked into the hotel under the name J.A. Cruz. And according to Bonham, when investigators tracked Anderson down to the Tropicana, they called his room from the desk to see if he was in. Anderson answered. The investigators then hung up, and moments later, Anderson was caught coming down the stairs at a rapid pace with his clothes stuffed into his bag. Judge Weeks concluded after hearing that evidence that Anderson had in fact attempted to evade apprehension in Saipan. She rejected the reduction in bail motion. A $100,000 property belonging to someone else was not enough. Anderson remains in Rosario Detention Facility tonight on a $1 million cash bail. And coming up next on Cable News, the campaign for governor is starting to heat up over the topic of crime. We'll have details when Cable News continues. Stay with us.
It takes the innovators to make things happen, and the innovators have done it again. Because IT&E, in cooperation with AT&T, the largest long-distance network in the world, is offering a powerful long-distance calling card. EconoCharge is the card that keeps you in touch when you travel. Another new service from IT&E. We're the innovators.
Walk into Advanced Marketing and find everything you'll need to make your business run effectively and efficiently. Advanced Marketing has a large line of food service, commercial, and janitorial equipment. There are Wolf char broilers, Jordan refrigerators and freezers, Gold Middle popcorn and snow cone machines, carpet soil extractors, high-speed buffers, and wet-dry vacuum cleaners. We even carry the Advanced line of floor and carpet cleaning machines, plus a whole lot more. Advanced Marketing, helping you to keep your business at its best. Located in the Harmon Industrial Park between Napa and Corn Furniture. Introducing the 1990 Accord LX, a car designed on the premise that luxury is a necessity, with power windows and door locks, cruise control, a high-power stereo system, and more. Then there's the 1990 Accord EX, a car that expands your horizons and takes you a step beyond the LX. The 1990 Accord EX is the most agile, responsive, and satisfying Accord sedan ever, with extras like a moonroof, an automatic antenna, and more. The new 1990 Accord LX and EX, two of the finer things in life, available at Mark's Motors in Tamuning and Chico.
Tired of running around for insurance? Switch to Stay Well. Stay Well can insure your health and your car and your home, all in one easy stop.
All your insurance in one easy stop.
Another good reason to join Stay Well.
The Crime Stoppers program of the CNMI has made the criminal vandalism of a Saipan cable TV news vehicle its spotlighted crime of the week. Public assistance is being sought in the Commonwealth for information leading to the arrest and conviction of the persons responsible for 3 sets of tires being slashed on the cable news unit in the last 2 weeks. In the meantime, the acting general manager of Saipan Cable TV is again urging Commonwealth Governor Larry Guerrero to, quote, take immediate and vigorous steps in getting this harassment and criminal activity stopped. This after Thompson received another threatening phone call Saturday night, less than 2.5 hours after Guerrero ordered his public safety director to complete a thorough investigation into the repeated attacks on the news unit and a series of ominous threats made to Saipan reporters dating back to August 30th. Said Saipan Cable TV acting manager Ernie Galito to Guerrero, this malicious harassment has to cease. We had all hoped that after our meeting, the DPS director would have had enough time to put the word out that this nonsense will come to a halt. In the meantime, the company has posted a private guard outside the home of Saipan Cable TV Bureau Chief J.T. Thompson, site of all 3 vehicle attacks, and where one call threatened the life of his 5-year-old daughter. Federal authorities have been asked to investigate.
Crime has become one of the issues in the race for governor. Earlier, Democratic candidate Madeline Bordallo had argued that crime has risen during the Ada Blah's years, a charge which the police chief and Ada's spokesman has denied. Today, Ada's side fired their own charge, to which Bordallo's side responded, in a war of words between representatives for the 2 candidates. Governor Joe Ada's spokesman, Mark Forbes, called it ironic that their opponent has used crime as an issue because he says his records show crime has actually dropped, including the types committed during the last Democratic team. Forbes delivered his own indirect charge against their opponent, Senator Madeline Bordallo, and her late husband, former Governor Ricky Bordallo. He was convicted of tampering with a jury and obstructing justice in his corruption trial. Forbes says his boss has seen to it that those types of white-collar crimes involving elected officials have virtually disappeared.
Crimes involving officials. I don't think that I need to elaborate very deeply on this subject. All people have to do is remember the way it was 4 years ago and think about the way it has been for the last 4 years.
Bordallo's spokeswoman described that suggestion as one of desperation because she thinks Ada's side lags behind in the polls. She then responded with her own attack against Ada's officials at Land Management.
I think if people would just recall very recently that there were indictments handed down against government officials not too long ago. So white-collar crime has disappeared. I leave that for the public to decide.
Galt referred to Joseph Cruz, the fired administrator at Land Management. He was indicted for soliciting bribes, among other charges. Galt also mentioned the probe into Dimitro Pablo, the former director of Land Management, appointed under the Republican team of Calvo Ada. Pablo is also being probed by a grand jury as a target in the current land management scandal.
Perhaps that they don't have a complete handle on what's going on in the government.
Forbes admits they've found problems with land, but he says, unlike in the past, at least they're now cleaning house from within.
The grand jury that is handing out indictments right now is a local grand jury, and it's our local AG that is working on this situation.
While the 2 sides debate which team has the worst record, their debate also shows that neither side can claim a perfect record. Both sides do agree on one issue. They want their supporters and their adversaries to stop vandalizing campaign signs. Spokespeople for both sides say it takes a lot of sweat for their campaign workers to put up these signs. Ada's spokesman says vandals have knocked down theirs in Dededo, Sinajana, and parts in the south, sometimes within 24 hours of their going up. But Bordallo's side says their signs have been smashed as well. She says she's delighted to join hands with Forbes to put an end to it as soon as possible.
They're only there temporarily. Day after Election Day, they all come down. And you won't see them again for another 2 years or 4 years. But they do cost a lot of money. It does take a lot of time to go out there and put up all those signs and make sure they're up and make sure they're not vandalized and painted over or whatever.
In the next few days, we'll present other areas where the two camps disagree.
In tonight's editorial, Guam Cable TV President Lee Holmes has a few words on why we shouldn't put federal benefits like SSI and tax relief on hold until the passage of our Commonwealth Act.
The following is a Guam Cable TV editorial. Speaking on behalf of Guam Cable TV is President Lee Holmes.
Assistant Interior Secretary Stella Guerra gave Guam good advice when she suggested moving ahead on the political front. We should act now on important changes like House Bill 4846, Supplemental Security Income for Armanamco, not wait for the Commonwealth Act. Since we moved ahead on excess land return, writing our own tax code, and now supplemental Social Security income benefits, we believe Mrs. Guerra has a good point. People who need additional Social Security benefits need them now. They shouldn't be forced to wait until Congress and the Self-Determination Commission finally agree on the Commonwealth Act. We feel Congress was right to allow Guam to write our own tax code in 1986, and Guam should do that now. The historic Commonwealth Albuquerque meeting was in 1983, and we didn't vote on the act until 1987. We've gone through two Congresses since, and the Commission and Congress have not yet resolved the Commonwealth Act disputes. Take, for example, Commonwealth Section 1102, which requires special preference for Guam residents for federal civil service jobs. When civil service preference was proposed in 1984, we could argue that the island had low wages and high unemployment. Today, in 1990, after GovGuam pay raises in 1986, Option 1 in 88, and 5440 in 1990, Guam has the lowest unemployment in the United States, and GovGuam pays more than the federal civil service in a number of positions. We're not saying that approval of civil service preference will be impossible, but it's harder now to make a compelling story. With many such difficult tasks ahead in getting the Commonwealth Act passed, we believe it's important to get supplemental security income, tax relief, and as many benefits as we can without waiting until all the Commonwealth Act disputes get resolved. Let's help our Armanamco now.
The preceding has been an editorial by Guam Cable TV President Lee Holmes. Responsible rebuttals are welcome. Rebuttals should address the ideas expressed in the editorial, not be personal attacks, should be approximately the same length, and in good taste.
From the Persian Gulf, the latest message from Iraqi President Saddam Hussein is that he will destroy oil fields in the Middle East and attack Israel if other nations try to force his troops out of Kuwait. Richard Roth has details.
Smiles on the faces of Iraq's Revolutionary Council members did not match the fierce rhetoric contained in a statement issued after the meeting. President Saddam Hussein and his top associates said if attacked, Iraq would unleash an assault aimed at world oil and Israel.
The United States should clearly understand that it is driving the whole region, not only Iraq, but maybe even the whole world, and at the foremost, even its sons that Bush had brought to this area to kill. They may not come out of this region for tens of years, and they and the petrol and Israel will be in a situation that is different than the one they are in now, and this is the typhoon.
The statement read by Saddam's personal spokesman denounced once again the U.S. presence in the Gulf. It gave little room for negotiations.
The policy of threatening must be transformed to one of negotiations. And this would be done by announcing the withdrawal of the U.S. troops from the region.
Iraq said America should realize the danger of a blitzkrieg attack. The statement said the U.S. had gone too far in its criminal acts against Iraq. An accidental or deliberate spark could have disastrous results.
When the flood takes place, it would not only include Iraq, but it will be overwhelming to include the whole world.
Iraq defiantly said it would never leave Kuwait. Amidst the threats and war drums on the horizon, a small group of Western diplomats and people not allowed to leave Iraq gathered for Sunday night services in Baghdad. There are more empty chairs than usual at the St. George's Church. Some pray to get out, others for help in assisting those who want to leave the region. Jane Walker can't escape a contract she has to work in a Baghdad hospital.
I feel that it is unfair that we haven't freedom to go home when we are here working, helping the Iraqi people.
The British ambassador says he felt sad this Sunday because of what happened to a British couple at the airport.
Man pretty sick, and nonetheless the authorities would not let him travel on to England. So the wife had to take the decision in about a quarter of an hour, does she stay with her sick husband here or does she go to England? It's a pretty tough time. And I feel very cross that they haven't got the humanity to let these sick people out.
The pastor accepts the decrease in the congregation and says the church is a happy place.
Obviously, with the umbrella that's over it at the moment, we're all concerned.
Meanwhile, a jet carrying 112 hostages, including Americans, from Iraq and Kuwait, landed at Raleigh-Durham International Airport in North Carolina early Sunday morning. Tiffany Williams tells us that was the last government-chartered freedom flight out of the Middle East. On board, 77 adults, 15 infants, and 22 older children.
World Airways Flight A3626 touched down at Raleigh-Durham International Airport at 6:03 this evening, nearly an hour and a half ahead of schedule. This is believed to be the last U.S. chartered freedom flight out of Baghdad. On board were 111 evacuees, almost half of which Americans. Evacuees who reportedly appeared to be relieved to be on American soil.
I could see a relief on these people's faces that they were glad to be here.
This flight is actually the last of more than half a dozen government charters out of Iraq, charters which ferried almost 2,000 American citizens and their families to safety. American citizens like Khalid Abdu, who left behind his entire family to start a new life in the United States. He says he was in danger living in Kuwait.
Some Iraqi soldiers, some snipers were shooting at us, and they hit the water tankers and all the water supply, and they hit the pipes, or the water supply is gone.
Even though the State Department does not have any more chartered flights scheduled out of Baghdad at this time, government officials say they will continue to work until every last American who wants to leave Kuwait or Iraq has returned home.
55 of the passengers on board that flight were U.S. citizens. Some good weather news after nearly 2 months of rain. We may see the sun for a whole week. Barbara's up next with our forecast.
Hi, I'm Kurt Moynihan, and this, as you probably recognize, is Moynihan's Insurance in Agania. Last year, we opened the second Moynihan's Insurance branch in Ditterdo. Well, we're on the move again. This time to Tamuning. Come on in and look around. This is no limited insurance branch. There is life, health, pension, medical.
Officers involved narrowly avoided what could have become an explosive situation. Kevin Kerrigan reports.
Of the 5 escapees who sawed their way out of their prison cell and then went under and over the 2 perimeter fences at DOC early yesterday morning, one of them, Peter F. DePazna, voluntarily turned himself into police near Elig Bay in Jonia last night. But the remaining 4 somehow made their way to this abandoned home in Windward Hills at the end of Chaco Road. Investigators believe that someone dropped them off here. Convicted murderer Jose Cabrera Sablan. Rudy Cabrera Sablan, convicted of aggravated assault. Jose David Fejeron, doing time on 2 burglaries. And Gregory B. Castro, convicted of 2 burglaries and an arson. An anonymous tip brought police here at about 9 this morning. Team leader Sergeant Frank Leon Guerrero.
Okay, we received information from the radio dispatcher about 3 male individuals walking around this particular area. So with the officers from the Special Enforcement Unit, we came over here, we contained the area. As we made our approach to the building, I heard some noises inside. We inquired from the owner of the place if somebody was supposed to be in here, and he said no. We did find a shotgun on the outside, and he said it wasn't his either. So.
The officers surrounded the house and made repeated attempts to call the escapees out, but that effort failed, so the decision was made to fire 1 tear gas canister inside and force them out.
When we threw the gas in, all 4 people were flying out the windows and the doors. And
did you have to chase after them, tackle them?
No, they were overwhelmed by the gas. They just went down on the ground.
In addition to the 1 shotgun found outside, police later found 2 more shotguns inside, plus shotgun shells, knives, canned goods, a tactical vest, binoculars, clothes, and other goods.
Where did they get the shotguns?
We haven't determined that yet. We picked up we picked up 3 shotguns, numerous types of weapons. And 2 of the shotguns were loaded, and 1 of them was actually cocked and ready to fire.
Last night, police received information that the escapees were in the Windward Hills area and that they intended to rob the mini Kamachili tree store near where they were captured this morning.
We did pick up information that they may try to hit the store, the Kamachili store. We gave warning to the store owners, and we did do a surveillance in the house, and nothing happened as of last night. We did a surveillance around the house, and they probably noticed us, so they may have stayed away from that.
Police say they also received information that the inmates intended to go down fighting.
They were ready for us, and we did use our equipment, and that saved a lot of the efforts here.
Kevin Kerrigan, Cable News, Agana.
The 5 escapees are all in maximum security closed confinement tonight. Each of them is now facing another 3 to 4 years additional prison time for busting out of DOC. Prison spokesman Max Slavitt says that an internal affairs investigation has been launched to find out who was at fault, and Guam police are trying to find out who helped these convicted felons after they escaped and how they got a hold of those shotguns. In a related development, Senate Judiciary Chairwoman Pilar Lujan announced today that because of the recent rash of escapes from the Department of Corrections, she's called DOC officials to appear before a special oversight hearing next Tuesday on October 2nd. In a release today, the senator is quoted as saying that anytime there's an escape at DOC, something's obviously gone wrong. This mass escape is extremely disturbing, end quote. The senator noted that the previous legislature impaneled a special committee on corrections which recommended solutions to some of the problems at DOC. However, despite assurances of implementation, the recommendations have not been followed through. Our community should not be gripped in fear, said the senator. Our tail end of the criminal justice system is in apparent need of repair.
In Laverne, California, 2 men are holding 19 hostages at gunpoint inside a McDonald's restaurant at this hour. Los Angeles County officials say the standoff began when 3 men ran into the fast food restaurant, apparently after robbing a nearby clothing store. One of the suspects was taken into custody, though, after he ran out from the restaurant shortly after entering it. So far, no reports of injuries, no shots have been fired. LA County Sheriff's deputy says efforts are being made to talk with the gunman.
We are engaged in hostage negotiation. We have people attempting at least to talk to them on the phone. We don't know if they've gotten in contact with them. Hopefully we'll have information on that later.
Deputy Bill Wenner says they're estimating several children among the hostages. The 2 men are armed with a rifle, a pistol, and a knife. The city of Laverne is about 25 miles northeast of Los Angeles. The Guam Police Department's Crime Stoppers program and Guam Cable TV today received the Crime Stoppers International Gold Award for reenacting crime and special programming dealing with the criminal justice system. The award was presented to Guam Cable TV at the close of the 11th Annual Crime Stoppers International Conference. That took place in Hamilton, Ontario, Canada. That's where cable newsman Jerry Lyons gives us this report.
In the form of a special edition Marcus 101,000 People Award. It is basically for our work on a special Crime Stoppers program, an episode of which was featured on Crime Stoppers 800, which is an internationally shown program dedicated to helping solve crimes with the help of the community and anonymous tips. There are more than 700 people from 800 Crime Stoppers associations here in Canada. They cover 5 continents. The Crime Stoppers Guam program, a product of the Crime Stoppers Guam organization, the board, and Guam Cable TV, won that special award for our program category. We should also mention here that Lieutenant Phil Dennis of the Guam Police Department is also going to be on the international board. The terms run for 2 years. It's expected to give Guam even more good publicity than it already has had at this convention. Also, Phil is one of 3 people up for Coordinator of the Year, which is also an international competition. This is Jerry Lyons reporting from Hamilton, Ontario, Canada for the 11th Annual Crime Stoppers International Board Conference meeting.
Our Jerry Lyons accepted the Crime Stoppers International Award on behalf of Guam Cable TV. Accepting the award for the Guam Crime Stoppers program were, in addition to Lieutenant Phil Dennis, 2 members of the Guam Crime Stoppers Board of Directors, Ron Connolly and former Chairman Fred Esterbrook.
Those tax rebates most of us are going to receive may not be so great for some welfare recipients because your benefits could get cut. Stay with us.
At Guam Automotive Clinic, your car is their business. That's why you'll find their showroom loaded with everything you need to give your car personality. And to keep your car cool, try their lifetime warranty window tinting. They'll even customize the exterior from a paint job to graphic designing for your business. Walk into Guam Automotive Clinic and walk out with a touch of class for your car. Guam Automotive Clinic, where your car is the only reason they're in business. Your relaxation time shouldn't have to turn into battle mania with your VCR or television. Sayer Company offers a large line of quality Zenith TVs and VCRs. Zenith televisions meet the needs of a family or the individual. There are 2 Zenith VCRs which have outstanding multiple features, so you can watch the programming you want when you want to. With Sayer Company's financing plans, you can say goodbye to TV battle mania with reliable Zenith televisions and VCRs from the Sayer Company, located along Route 8, Mighty.
Decade, Hakobatan has contributed to the economic growth of Guam. Mirroring its employment growth, its taste in quality merchandise, and its anticipation for the future. Hakobatan helps meet the demands of our tourism industry by providing top-of-the-line brand name items from pens and lighters to clothing and accessories. Hakobatan has also extended its hand to the local sector of the island by promoting Guam-made products. Yes, for over a decade, Guam's own Hakobatan has been a part of the island's growth, development, and our community. Hakobatan, a reflection of Guam's history, Guam's best.
All right, we have a quick update. This just in. That hostage situation in Southern California is now over. Those who had taken the 19 hostages, the 2 men, have now surrendered. Also, we reported earlier about how that special territorial grand jury was meeting. It's just adjourned. Our Kevin Garrigan reports that that group had been meeting. They had been taking some witnesses. They had not completed all that. No indictments today. We expect more later. Most of us look forward to getting up to $2,000 in tax rebates, and GovGuam workers look forward to getting even more, a $5,440 pay raise, and for retirees, an $1,800 lump sum. Now, most folks will use what they get as extra spending money, but for some folks on welfare, public officials advise that you have to watch very carefully how you spend it, because you may need that money in case your benefits get cut.
Which is, the deadline is 30 days from now.
Public welfare workers will be cutting back assistance from some of their clients as a result of the government giving tax rebates to the general public and pay raises to GovGuam workers. For at least 3,700 people who come here for public aid, for food stamps, for medical aid, officials here are warning you got to be real careful about how you spend the government money you'll be getting back, because you may become ineligible for further aid, at least temporarily.
Those receiving public assistance should consider
Public Health Deputy Director Peter Atta warns those affected to treat the extra money as if public welfare is giving out benefits in advance.
The public assistance will not be coming for X number of months. So this is why that they should use the money wisely.
Public Health will stop giving food stamps to people who receive enough money to exceed $2,000 to $3,000 in resources. That's expected to affect about 1,500 people, but they can reapply after they've spent the excess money. Public Health will also stop giving public assistance to about 350 households on welfare. That includes aid to families with dependent children, the aged, the blind, and the disabled. The temporary cuts work like this. If a family makes $200 a month, In 10 months, they make $2,000. But since the rebate gives them $2,000, then that family gets no welfare for 10 months. And that's all the more reason welfare recipients must watch out how they spend their money, according to Public Welfare Chief Myrna San Nicolas.
If the family spends the entire 2001 time, they will have problems meeting their needs for the next 10 months.
The last group to see cutbacks in aid are some of those in the MIC, or Mentally Indigent Care Program, those who need medical help but can't afford it. More than 1,800 of these clients are expected to pay a larger share for the services they now receive. They include those clients who make more than $410 in monthly income or whose resources exceed $1,800. Public welfare officials say they're glad to help if their clients have any questions. Now, public health officials were meeting late into the day to try to determine just when these cutbacks will take effect.
The effects of Governor Atta's proposal to rebate taxes has led Senator Madeleine Bordallo to charge Atta with misleading lawmakers. In a news release, Bordallo says Atta's top advisors had assured senators that the rebate would not adversely affect any programs. Now, she says, we find out that is not true. She says the people who most need the rebate are the ones adversely affected. She says irate constituents have called her to say that public health has warned them not to cash their tax rebate checks or else risk losing their food stamp, welfare, and medical benefits. Bordallo further charged that people are faced with a choice of spending their checks or losing their monthly benefits. In response, Governor Atta's spokesman Mark Forbes says it's only natural that they'll lose money.
Naturally, the amount of food stamps you may require is going to diminish.
Oh, yes.
But it's still on a month-to-month basis. People need to remember that this tax rebate is a one-month, one-shot deal. It's not a situation where you're getting $1,000 forever every month. No.
Forbes says for Bordallo to imply the effect is a surprise is either a misstatement or it shows her utter ignorance. Forbes says the governor feels giving money directly to welfare recipients and the general public is a better alternative than not doing so at all, while Bordallo says it's still tough for welfare recipients to explain to their families that the tax rebate is for everyone but them.
Another issue both sides disagree on is that of controls on development. In the past year, Governor Atta has passed 2 executive orders calling for a more thorough review of development projects. But the Bordallo side maintains it's still too little and too late. Development on Guam has become a major issue in the governor's race, with the Bordallo camp pointing to the negatives and the Atta camp pointing to the positives. To ensure that development projects do nothing to damage the environment irreparably and that developers avoid violating land laws, the Atta team has, in the past year, come forth with 2 executive orders. They call for environmental impact assessments and a more thorough review from the Development Review Committee. But Bordallo spokeswoman Kathy Galt says all that is a sign of desperation.
That's like, you know, worrying about the horse after it's already left the barn. To implement controls in the final year of an administration does not speak to their sense of planning for the future. Where were these controls in 1987?
To which Atta's spokesman, Mark Forbes, responds is political rhetoric. He says the controls have worked, just by the mere fact that the Territorial Land Use Commission now faces a backlog of around 160 development projects.
Is that Governor Atta receives this criticism from the opposition that you haven't done enough to control development. Well, I'll point to that as a fact that demonstrates very clearly that the governor has done something to control development. We do have a backlog. We have a backlog because the projects are being reviewed partially.
Forbes fired his own charge against the Bordallo side, and it's linked to the late former governor, Ricky Bordallo.
We've essentially already had the opposition administration twice. Some of the characters are different, but basically it's the same group of people. And in those 2 terms, where was the control of development there? When they had the opportunity, what did they do? Nothing. Zero. Zip. Not one single substantial measure to control development ever came out of a Democrat administration.
Not quite true, because the governor, former Governor Bordallo, did submit to the legislature the Cabales na Plano para Guahan in his second administration to try and have a master plan adopted for the island. And that too, at that time, it was with the understanding that it has to be updated. But you'll recall that Governor Bordallo's theme for his second administration was economic rearmament.
Both sides claim to be in favor of controlled development. It remains to be seen whose definition of controlled will be the voters' choice. Between now and election, we'll continue our coverage of how the two sides differ.
The grounds of the old hospital may be the next battleground between the Democrats and the Republicans over its long-term use. Earlier this year, Democratic Senator Eddie Regis wanted to put the new mental health building here and construct classrooms for medical training. In a recent news release, Democratic Senator Ted Nelson says the 48-acre site should be leased back to the original owner, Frank D. Paris, so that he can develop the site for the public's benefit. Nelson says the property could contain a police substation, public parking lots, a convention center, and a public mass transfer station. Nelson goes on to say that if Paris, who has never paid for the property by the government of Guam, declines to develop the site, then he must still be compensated for the original taking. Nelson also added that if Paris declines, the government can seek another local developer to build the public facilities before even thinking of leasing it to outside interests. Governor Joe Atta's spokesman, Mark Forbes, says he doesn't see how it will work.
Developer would be willing to invest their own money and spend their own money in the millions of dollars on top of paying leasehold to the government of Guam for the use of the property for the privilege of building the government of Guam a mass transit parking facility. My question is, what's in it for the developer? Why would anyone do that, whether they were local or not?
Forbes added since taking office 4 years ago, Governor Joe Atta has always had other plans for the hospital area site.
Why don't we use the property, have the government make some income, and then use that income to build a new campus for the Guam Community College? Because the governor feels very strongly that GCC does require a new campus. And
according to the governor's planning chief, Peter Leon Guerrero, the administration is no longer dealing with any developers for lease of the property. After lengthy negotiations, the administration was unable to come to terms with Fashco, one of only 2 developers who met the requirements of the administration's conditions. Leon Guerrero says after some re-evaluation, planners have decided that the 48-acre site is too large for any one developer to handle, and that the best way to deal with it is to parcel the land into smaller lots. The Bureau of Planning would then have to come up with a master plan that will provide some consistency for the overall design of the area. Tenants of one Tamuning apartment complex are angered over a 17-day notice to vacate the premises. The 25-unit Eons apartment complex is owned by a company called World Bell. According to one of the tenants, Lieutenant Commander Morris Issit, the tenants were given notice on September 21st by the owner's spokesman, Juan Baza, that they had to leave the building by October 8th. Issit was angered that he didn't get at least the customary 30-day notice, but according to the spokesman for the housing senator, Gordon Mayu, a 30-day notice is not required. Mark Ransom says Guam presently doesn't have a landlord-tenant code. One has been drafted already, though, but he says it could be introduced into the legislature if lawmakers perceive that there is a strong need for such regulation. Eons Enterprises manager Juan Baza says the owners want the building vacant so they can complete some major maintenance projects that would inconvenience the tenants. Baza says management will pay the moving expenses for tenants who choose to leave by the requested date. Late this afternoon, Baza said that those tenants who feel strongly about staying until their leases run out will also be allowed to stay.
From the Persian Gulf, Saddam Hussein says no way is he giving up Kuwait. It belongs to Iraq, he says, and he'll fight for 1,000 years to keep it. Against that backdrop, the Iraqi president was the object of a verbal beating during today's opening session of the UN General Assembly. Now, while world leaders are denouncing Hussein's action and rhetoric, oil experts are taking a serious look at his threat to destroy Middle East oil fields. All this, as Steve Handelman's reports, comes in the wake of the highest oil prices yet on the stock market.
As the first UN General Assembly session since Iraq invaded Kuwait opened in New York, French President Mitterrand slammed Saddam Hussein.
I say there is no compromise.
And Ronnie Vasquez. Uranus then hired Andrew Tomaso, Carson Tamura, and Joseph Agualo as couriers to bring the cocaine from California through Hawaii to Guam. Once on Guam, the couriers turned the cocaine over to Peter Cepeda, and Cepeda in turn broke up the loads into smaller quantities and distributed it, according to court records, to Ike Ezeki, Manny Leon Guerrero, Lawrence Escamilla, James Sarmiento, and others who sold the drug to users here on island. Court documents reveal that this cocaine drug ring led by Uranus brought 1 kilo of cocaine into Guam in 1986, and that grew to 2 kilos in 87 and 88, and by 1989 the group was able to bring more than 3 kilos onto Guam. The bust that led to the arrest and breakup of this conspiracy occurred last November at Guam International Airport when 3.2 kilos of cocaine were seized. In all, Uranus admitted to being responsible for bringing 28 kilos of cocaine into Guam over a 4-year period, netting more than $600,000 in the process. The profits, according to the record, were laundered through 2 Hawaii banks and invested into Uranus's business East-West Entertainment Incorporated in Hawaii. Uranus faces a maximum penalty of 20 years on the money laundering charge and 40 years on the cocaine charge, and new federal sentencing guidelines require a minimum term of imprisonment of 5 years on that cocaine charge. Sentencing for Uranus is scheduled for October 5th. Of the 10 indicted on charges relating to this conspiracy, meanwhile, 6 have been sentenced, 3 are awaiting sentencing. An arrest warrant is still outstanding, though, for Carson Tamura.
From Superior Court today, Michael M. Kitagwa was sentenced to 5 years imprisonment plus a $5,000 fine on a charge of criminal sexual conduct. Kitagwa was found guilty of fondling an 11-year-old girl at the M&R store in Santa Rita, an incident which occurred on July 30th of last year. However, Kitagwa remains free tonight pending the outcome of an appeal. Continental Airlines plans to double its precautions to prevent any more rats from getting into its planes. One of its planes had been quarantined by Guam customs officials last night after a cargo handler reported seeing a 6-inch rat. It was running around inside the plane's belly in the cargo section where baggages are stored. Customs officials immediately responded to the report, ordering the airline to close the belly and call in an exterminator. Commerce Director Peter Barcina wants to keep Guam free of rabies and other diseases. He feels that the agents must act immediately whenever they hear these types of reports.
Especially from a foreign country. There are the rodents carrying diseases or plagues or in some instances rabies.
While Commerce quarantined the plane for 4 hours, Continental's operations manager, Guy Schrader, says he also ordered the plane out of the air to prevent the rodent from causing any electrical damage, a fear echoed by customs.
Plastic materials or anything that they can nibble at or gnaw at. You know, these are things that are possible dangers to aircraft equipment.
Continental reports that the fumigation eventually got rid of the rat. Guy Schrader says he believes the rat got into the plane through a hole in someone's baggage. Customs reports this is the first known case of a rat inside a plane, but Continental says it has experienced problems of rats chewing on wires before, a problem that led the airline to protect its cable wiring with a hard Teflon coating. Continental says it accommodated the last of its passengers this morning. Now, besides looking out for rats in airplanes, Guam customs officials are busy looking for people bringing in illegal foods and other contraband. And in that effort, Guam Customs has beefed up its enforcement through the power of information. Guam Customs officials check up on passengers to make sure they bring in no illegal cash or food products onto the island, or illegal drugs like the $180,000 worth of marijuana this week seized in those 8 elephant statues from the Philippines. But up until now, officers have had to review passengers' documents manually without the use of computers, a method Commerce Director Peter Barcina thinks impedes his customs agents.
It's rather slow. The volume of information and data coming through that is found in the baggage declaration or customs form is a lot of good information that can be utilized for profiling, for a lot of intelligence gathering type activities.
But now, the first of 8 special computers has arrived at the airport. They come thanks to a federal grant from the U.S. Justice Department. And Barcina thinks his officers can now do a better job of stopping the bad stuff from getting into Guam's ports of entry.
What this system will allow us to do is do a quicker profiling. If there are cause for concern and a certain passenger is flagged or through intelligence is flagged, we conduct the proper inspection or questioning for some of these individuals.
Barcina adds that passengers will also benefit because the new computers should speed up their clearance through customs. In another report, we'll tell you about how Customs is beefing up security, not just through the power of information, but through the power of some extra eyes as well.
While the investigation into the Monday escape of 5 DOC inmates continues, corrections officials today have put the 3 officers who were on duty that morning in F Building where the escape began on administrative leave with pay. DOC spokesman Max Slavitt says the officers will remain on leave until a decision is made on a proposed adverse action against them. Slavitt says all 5 inmates have been interrogated separately and that their stories are now being checked out. DOC officials have also set about patching the holes that allowed the prison escape to happen. Slavitt says that the window bars, which were sawed through by the inmates, have been welded back into place. In addition, Slavitt says that DOC Superintendent Major Jose Q. Salas has requisitioned steel diamond-shaped mesh to cover the windows in F Building. The interior perimeter fence that the prisoners went under has also been repaired, and Slavitt says that Major Salas had previously requested concertina wire to put on top of the exterior fence at the north exit, but the requisition order has not yet been filled. The escapees were able to climb over the top of that portion of the fence because there was no concertina wire on top of it. Meanwhile, police continue their investigation into the escape in an effort to learn who supplied the inmates with guns once they got out and other supplies. Regarding the escape of convicted robber Vincent Cepeda on August 1st, Slavitt says DOC Director Rick Salas plans to decide tomorrow on the adverse action facing officers Brian Vickers and Teddy Gumabon, who were on duty when Cepeda escaped. Senator Pilar Lujan, meanwhile, has scheduled a hearing next Tuesday to look into the rash of escapes from the island's prison. And coming up, Iraqi President Saddam Hussein received another crippling blow from the UN Security Council today. We'll have details.
The United Nations acted to close loopholes.
Person to person, so easy. Person to person, so easy.
From 12 cities in Asia, fly with us to over 200 cities across America.
We at NAMBO are committed to excellence in service. If anything should ever happen to your home or your auto, we'll be there to help quickly process your claims and ensure that you're fairly compensated.
And that's not just a promise, it's a commitment.
Going with Guam, going with Guam, NAMBO Insurance.
I've got a what? I blushed. I really will. It's inconceivable. How could I possibly have a cavity? This is devastating.
If your little kid has a cavity, we have news for you. Over the years, one toothpaste has helped prevent more cavities than all the others combined.
Yay!
Not surprisingly, it's a toothpaste more dentists recommend. Crest.
This is a totally incredible visit. Yes, let's go.
Crest. It's hard on cavities and easy on you.
I'm out of here.
Hundreds of acres of prime beachland in the northwest corner of Guam will be open for development if the families who own that land and Senator Carl Gutierrez get their way. Toward that effort, Gutierrez has introduced the Northwest Territory of Guam Act into the legislature. His bill seeks to eliminate Air Force restrictions at Potts Junction and Route 3 running to the shoreline and public beaches at Urunau, Falcona, and Inepson. Gutierrez notes that over 430 beaches of Urunau beach property is zoned for hotel use, but he says the Artero family, which owns the property, can develop none of it because of the military's restricted access. Gutierrez also points out that the Air Force has used the area since World War II to dump hazardous materials there. He says nearly 1,000 acres of Guam's tax base is unusable because of Air Force interference. The Northwest Territory of Guam Act would open up that land and direct the Guam Economic Development Authority to recover the right-of-way to that property and force the military to clean up the hazardous dumps. It would also allow GIDA to lease and develop 86 acres of public landlocked beach land. Gutierrez says it's about time that Gov Guam steps in and helps private landowners in their quest to get military restrictions to their property lifted.
On Saipan, the Shimizu Corporation's plan to build 2 18-hole golf courses in the Cagman.
Nelson Rockefeller.
attacking Republican leadership wants much greater effort in national defense, bolder foreign policies, advanced civil rights. His demands provoke deep resentment. The clash looms between liberal and conservative Republicans, and Chicago will be the arena. The Windy City, most famous convention gathering.
Coming up on the news tonight, Governor Joe Atta is talking with realtors today, telling them how he stands on land issues. Governor says he feels the Real Estate Commission's disciplinary powers ought to be expanded.
A survivor of a three-jet accident in Canton, China is denying reports that hijackers set off explosives triggering that disaster. These stories plus weather and sports.
Government services, from weak management and poor leadership. That's not good. You deserve a government that pays attention to your concerns, and you deserve a leader who isn't afraid to lead.
Ben Pangilinan.
Like guilty plea after guilty plea for bribes, kickbacks, and extortion. Like felony convictions of some of the highest officials of our land. The pride and the dignity of our people was threatened. Corruption was a cancer, eating at the very soul of Guam. And our people, a decent, hard-working, honest people, said enough was enough. Today, our pride as a community has been restored. Do we want to go back to the dark and corrupt days of 4 years ago? Of course not. Nothing is ever perfect, but no one can deny the tremendous improvements we have made, the challenges our people have overcome in the past 4 years. And that's good. It's the Maulic way. It's the spirit of Guam.
I gotta hit my retros and get back to...
Welcome to the award-winning cable news with the latest local, national, and international news, weather, and sports information. Now the most comprehensive news organization on Guam and in the Northern Marianas, the Cable News Team.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Wednesday night cast of Guam Cable News. I'm Ken Booth.
Today, thank you for joining us this evening. I'm Jane Flores.
Recent inmate escapes have brought the Department of Corrections right out into the light as an issue in the race for governor. At yesterday's debate, Senator Madeline Bordallo criticized Governor Joe Atta's Department of Public Works, asking why that agency had failed to give DOC a permit for inmates to be housed in the new prison facility. Parlin Chang gives us an update from DOC.
The new compound at the Department of Corrections has been completed for 1 year now. It can house 36 inmates, and it's been approved by the Department of the Interior. But it remains empty, and considering the 13 inmates who have escaped since last November, well, that condition led Senator Bordallo to criticize the Department of Public Works for failing to issue an occupancy permit. DOC Director Rick Salas says that's because he wants Public Works to install extra security precautions first. But he does admit that Public Works has not yet done the job.
Well, I'm pretty sure that Public Works have other, not necessarily priorities, but other missions too in other government agencies. Maybe mine is not that much of a priority to them. But now with what happened yesterday, I think they realize, Public Works realized that it is really a priority.
DOC wants to make sure the new facility reaches the highest security standards possible before it opens up. But it's had to wait for Public Works for almost 1 year now to decide what to do. All that time, the repairs seem relatively minor. DOC wants Public Works to install a concrete bar door to keep inmates from escaping this exitway. DOC also wants Public Works to change the lock to the security center from the outside to the inside. Finally, DOC wants Public Works to reinforce the outside fence so that inmates cannot escape underneath. Late today, Cable News reached Public Works Director Benigno Palomo to respond to charges his agency delayed the occupancy permit. He denies those charges. He says he's ready to give DOC the permit because the compound meets his minimum standards. But DOC has not yet asked for the permit. He says DOC wants to upgrade the compound before asking for it, but his office cannot do that until DOC states just who will pay for the job. Also, he says he only got DOC's request 3 months ago without stating who will pay for the job. While lack of money remains DOC's lingering problem, the overcrowding of inmates continues. In Manilao, Farlan Chang, Cable News.
In a review of the DOC plan, it would appear that DOC's outline for occupancy has met minimum standards for occupancy. This is to raise security, but the present one does meet the standards. For him to get it, he must request it, we're told. The Department of Corrections reports that it has repaired the cell from which those 3 inmates escaped last Sunday. DOC's welder has welded in a very thick heavy metal grate on the inside and outside. That's just for the cell for now, but they will do the same, they say, for others. Before, only a light grating existed outside. It was an aluminum frame window with glass, really. The men had broken one of those glass panels, sawing the left-hand side of the frame, which gave them 8 inches of room. On the outside, the inmates had pried or kicked open the frame. DOC spokesman Max Slavitt says they've also moved out some inmates who were staying there for administrative segregation. That's the way it was put. That means only maximum security inmates only will stay there now. The 3 inmates who escaped, of course, have since been captured.
An island escrow agent says that developer Dan A. Del Priore is not telling the truth about what he did with at least $28,000 in deposit money on the Seaview condominium project in Agate. As cable news reported last Friday, Del Priore is under investigation for possible fraud by the prosecution division of the Attorney General's office. The investigation was begun after at least 19 people complained to the AG that Del Priore has not returned their money on the aborted project. Each person made a $1,500 deposit to Del Priore in early 1989, but the condominiums were never built and the money never returned to the individual investors. One investor, Jules Newcomb, who discussed the problem with cable news last week, said that he was on the reasons for Gill's firing, and the Civil Service Commission confirms that no explanation or adverse action notice regarding Gill has been filed with them. Habib says that Anderson called Gill into her office the day Cable's complaint was filed and said, "Did you read the complaint?" When Gill said he had, Anderson fired him, according to Habib. Yet Habib acknowledged that Gill has failed his bar exam twice. Habib says he is not aware of the results of Gill's 3rd sitting for the bar. However, Habib said that Gill offered to resign from the AG's office after his 2nd failure to pass the bar, but the Attorney General herself talked him out of it. Because of that, Habib maintains that his failure to pass the bar exam could not possibly be the reason for Gill's firing. Habib says Gill is seeking reinstatement, back pay, and attorney's fees.
The concerns of some of the island's real estate professionals addressed today by Governor Joe Zapata. The Realtors Association. People throughout the new United Germany are celebrating the reunification. 4 Korean nationals pleaded guilty today to illegally taking coral and harvesting coral here without a permit. The Korean men were part of the Korean vessel crew Sharon 31. Agriculture spokeswoman Lillian Mariano said her office had seized that vessel back in August. Judge Alberto Lamarena sentenced each of the 4 to $500 fine, 1-year probation, and 180 hours of community service work, which they're now performing at Ipao Beach under Parks and Rec. The ship's forfeiture hearing is scheduled for October 11th. That's when the court will decide whether Gov Guam keeps the boat or if the owners will simply pay a fine and take it back. Conservation officers responded to a couple of other coral-related violations in the past 24 hours. About 2 hours ago, conservation agents arrested 2 other Korean nationals at Ipao Beach with the illegal taking of coral and harvesting of coral. Spokeswoman Mariano said she thinks it's related to that Korean festival going on down there. These arrests come just a day after officials arrested 4 other Koreans.
Conservation officers seized a white pickup truck, a couple pieces of live coral, and 32 pieces of undersized aleeling shells. Thanks to an anonymous tip, the officers found 4 Korean men with the goods at 2 Lovers Point. One official says it's the first seizure of aleeling shells, and Sergeant Wayne Bigler says such violations also violate nature's ability to protect Guam.
You remove the coral, you're actually taking away the habitat of the fish. You know, a lot of local people rely on fish as for their food. And trochus, you know, catching the undersize will have an effect as far as production of the trochus. Yeah.
The 4 men were arrested on 3 charges: harvesting coral without a permit, illegally taking live coral, and harvesting undersized aleeling. That's also known as trochus shells. The 4 men are Korean steelworkers at the Milo Corporation, a construction firm in Jigo. Now, this latest seizure is just the latest in a rash for the year 1990. Officials have arrested 30 Koreans, 4 Chinese, and 1 Pohnpeian. A total of 35 this year, compared to none last year. Sergeant Bigler blames these records on the increase of foreign workers on Guam. But he says his people are taking measures with foreign governments to control the problem.
The RPIO's negotiating something with the consulates here and giving them some regulations where the regulations will be translated to their particular language.
Agriculture officials say they only have 8 conservation officers. That's why they depend on the public to call in any illegal actions.
The men were identified as a couple of 37-year-olds, Sung Sung Won and Park Young Moon, and 2 32-year-olds, Lee Pil Ho and Park Sung Mom. All were booked and released. The penalty they could face for each violation is $500 or 6 months in jail, or both. That's on each violation.
With all the rain we've been having the past few months, it may have been hard to notice any leaks in Guam's water system. The Public Utility Agency of Guam has been waging an aggressive war on leaks over the past
line and the Macheche substation. I'm proud that as a GPA board member, I contributed to the system's growth and reliability. Please vote for me, Nancy Tovis, Leon Guerrero, so I can do even more as a senator.
I gotta hit my retros and get back to tamooning.
Hi, folks. Oh, Super Chicken. We're going to continue that big sale. The factory said keep the rebates going until they're all gone. So take a look at this beautiful Montero. Fantastic 4-door loaded with everything that money can buy, including twin air. And let me tell you, take a look at this beautiful Love Bus. There's only 11 left. Now, if you want a Love Bus, 7-passenger with captain chairs and all, that's it. Take a look at the car. In back of me right now is the beautiful Galant, the car of the year last year. And over to my right is that beautiful little Mirage. Now, I'm going to tell you something. We moved out one heck of a lot of cars last month, and we're going to move a lot more. But we take in a lot of used cars when it happens. We've got 86s and 87s for $2,000 and $3,000. We have 88s and 89s for $3,000, $4,000, $5,000, $6,000, depending on the condition. But I'll tell you, every one of them are guaranteed to run real good. And you get a beautiful watch that looks just like a Rolex with every one of them, 18-karat layered gold. We love you, Guam.
Welcome to the award-winning cable news with the latest local, national, and international news, weather, and sports information. Now, the most comprehensive news organization on Guam and into Northern Marianas, the Cable News Team.
Good evening, everyone. Welcome to Cable News. I'm Kevin Kerrigan.
And I'm Farland Chang. Thanks for joining us tonight.
Our top story tonight, if your name begins with the letter A or the letter B, count yourself lucky today because the check is in the mail. That, according to the Department of Administration. Beginning today, and until the 20th of October, thousands of envelopes will be stuffed with rebate checks for the island's taxpayers. And it will be done in alphabetical order. Jerry Lyons reports.
They are distinctive checks in the counting rooms of the Department of Administration. Those that make it here are either for $1,000 or $2,000. They are all printed on blue and white check paper that has the words Commonwealth Now printed on it. More than 5,000 rebate checks to eligible taxpayers made their way today through the system, headed for the post office. So, if you're eligible for the rebate and your name begins with an A or a B, chances are your money will be in your possession tomorrow or Saturday, since first-class postage is the rule for these. The rest of the alphabet is spread out until October the 20th. Controller John DeNorsi says that his group is right on schedule.
We originally planned to take up to October 20th. It all depends on how fast we're able to accelerate it, but it may be possible to finish a week earlier, but for the public's sake, we're going to finish by October 20th. We have to allocate about 400 hours of man-hours effort. That number of hours is actually kind of small in relation to the total hours we're going to spend anyways in closing out the fiscal year. It's just a matter of people working 55-hour weeks instead of 50. But we're going to be able to do it. These people are really used to working hard. Both the financial management division and the division of accounts, all of them are excellent people. They're all hard workers.
Jennifer Arceo feels A-OK today. She's on the list to be one of the first to get her rebate. Here are her plans.
Put it in the bank where it belongs.
All of it?
No, because I'm going to have to pay my bills.
Okay.
And then maybe if I have enough, take a trip to Hawaii. I take an early vacation.
More than 39,000 checks totaling more than $56 million are slated to be in the mail within the next 16 days. In Agana, Jerry Lyons, Cable News.
The Department of Administration is also checking its list of taxpayers to find out who is not eligible for the rebate checks. In some cases, those who have not filed a tax return or those who have a lien of some kind on their income, either by GovGuam or, if they owe the federal government, the Internal Revenue Service. One group that will get back none or only a fraction of their rebate is that group which owes money to their spouses and children for child support. Workers in the Child Support Division of the Attorney General's office are diverting rebates from debtors. At least 685 cases of absent parents who owe money. Those people will end up finding their rebates going to either the child support which they owe, or the rebate will go to welfare if their children are getting only welfare. Deputy Attorney General Karen Keeler feels everyone benefits because debtors will reduce debt and those in need get help.
Our job here is to try and get debts paid off, to try and get parents to support their children, which the law requires. And right now, it seems as though the public's more aware of the needs of the children, and I can't imagine that people would be against it.
Keeler says her team and those from Superior Court only started work on this in mid-September because that's when lawmakers first approved the rebate. To all those who wonder if they'll get any money back at all, Keeler asks if they would kindly wait until November 1st so that they have time to allow checks to clear.
The import of fake designer goods. One U.S. Customs official says it's a violation going on for quite some time now, in part because it's gotten so little enforcement. But that's changing. Customs agent Richard Bratt says he and Guam customs agents seized this morning 2 boxes of fake Louis Vuitton handbags and Rolex watches from Korea.
Most recently, just a couple of hours ago, I had a phone call from one of the Guam customs officers that she had intercepted 2 shipments up at the mail branch in the Guam main facility up in Barragata.
Agent Bratt says this seizure is just the latest out of a dozen, all in the past 2 months. Now, these goods sell for a fraction of the cost of the real thing. For example, a $700 watch could go for $20 as a fake. And if this type of importation continues, U.S. Customs officials feel it'll not only cost the manufacturers lots of money, it'll also damage Guam's reputation. Those in the tourism business know very well that Japanese tourists spend big bucks to buy designer goods. And to cash in on that, some illegal importers from Korea believe imitation is the finest form of flattery. That's why they brought in these fake designer goods over the past 2 months into the Guam airport. And that's what U.S. Customs agent Richard Bratt has the power to seize.
A trademark violation essentially is a company that's not authorized to manufacture a product that has a registered trademark on it. And they are manufacturing, generally speaking, shoddy merchandise as opposed to the higher quality pieces.
U.S. and Guam customs officials have seized hundreds of fake watches like these Gucci's wrapped in cheap plastic and labeled Made in Korea. Also imitation handbags like these Louis Vuittons, inside of which officers have pulled out Korean newspapers used for stuffing, and clothes like these Benetton shirts made of inferior material. Designer belts labeled Dunhill, Chanel, and Yves Saint Laurent, all made from lower-grade substance. Agent Bratt says manufacturers suffer heavy losses from such imitation, and he adds Guam's image can suffer as well.
I'd say certainly that Guam's going to end up with a reputation over the years of a real good place to come to get a tan or to relax and kick back, but don't buy anything here because the merchandise is not up to standards.
The samples are just a small part from a whole room full of goods. Goods seized in a dozen cases and goods worth at least $40,000 at the wholesale price. To stop the imports, Agent Bratt says he's warned most of the tour booth operators to watch out.
I've also made an effort to get down to the half-a-day exchange and to the flea market in Harmon over the weekends and to give an information notice out to all of these vendors to tell them that it is illegal to bring the stuff in, that there are civil and criminal penalties both.
Customs will also seize and destroy all fake property. Customs feels these penalties will teach violators that imitation flatters no one. Now, manufacturers can register their trademark goods with U.S. Customs for $100. And once manufacturers know that Customs will destroy the fake goods, some of these legitimate firms can agree to donate the fake goods. In fact, Benetton has done just that to help Philippine earthquake victims, and Customs is trying to get the Reebok Shoe Company to donate the fake shoe that they had seized over to DOC inmates. But Agent Bratt joked that might not be such a good idea considering all the inmates escaping.
Well, yet another attempt to oust Philippine President Corazon Aquino appears to be in the works. The Philippine military tonight is on a nationwide alert following a mutiny by rebel soldiers on the southern island of Mindanao. Chief of Staff General Renato de Villa made a radio announcement in Manila saying that the rebels had taken over a major southern port city and Army Brigade headquarters there. After huddling with her cabinet and senior military officers at the presidential palace, President Aquino asked people in a radio address to rally against the troublemakers. The government is taking steps to isolate the rebels now, cutting off air and sea routes to Mindanao. A senior legislator who asked not to be identified says the mutineers plan to establish a secessionist government on that island, which is the second largest island of the Philippines.
A heated political argument is erupting over the 8 escapes from the Department of Corrections in the past week. Details when we come back.
Hi, I'm Patty at Jerry's. We've just received a brand new shipment of new merchandise in all departments, like these girls' 2-piece pant sets by Randy for the low, low price of $22.98, regular $25. We also have just arrived ladies' tops by Hot Stuff in many different colors, acetate and rayon material, many different styles for only $19.98, regular $24. To match, we have ladies' leggings in an assortment of colors, sizes small, medium, large, for the low, low price of $9.98, regular $12. Come down to Jerry's and save on these items and much more. You'll be glad you did.
If you buy a riding lawnmower based on price alone, you might be inclined to lean in this direction. But when you consider Lawn Boy's rugged gear drive transmission, commercial-grade engine, and sturdy box-channel frame, you get a more balanced perspective. And when you consider the fact that it's a Lawn Boy, it puts a whole new slant on things.
Marbles, top of the hill, Sinahanya.
Value couldn't be higher. The prices couldn't be any lower than right now. And the best of the Nissan 90s are moving fast. So make your move while there's still time. Cash in on a Sentra deal and drive away in Guam's best-selling car. Trade in that pickup you're driving now for the most powerful truck in its class, Nissan Hardbody. Move up to Maxima, move out in a Z, but do it now because the best of the Nissan 90s are moving fast and time is running out.
Hey, Guam, there's a ballot box at our new Popeye store that lets you vote for your favorite Cajun side dish. And a box special that lets you buy our special 8-piece box and get half a box free.
Wow!
Vote for your favorite Cajun side dish and have a chance to win a $100 U.S. savings bond. Come to the new Popeye's famous fried chicken and biscuits in the Gibson Shopping Center. And for a limited time, when you buy the special 8-piece box, you'll get half a box free. Only $10.99.
Goodness gracious, I love that chicken.
It's the Oktoberfest Sweepstakes, 700 yards open grade, this Friday, October 5th. Free 6-pack cooler bags for the first 300 customers. Free ice cream for all customers, courtesy of Foremost. Miller Genuine Draft and light beer is only 25 cents. Clip-free admission tickets from the Tribune and daily papers to win fantastic prizes. Round trip to the Philippines, Hilton Weekend Getaway, Hitachi remote control color television sets, and so much more. Also, join us for our Toyota Hilux truck giveaway promotion now through December 21st. Co-sponsored by Payless Markets. This all happens at Guam Greyhound Park this Friday.
A heated political environment appears to be adding fuel to the debate over the recent escapes from the Department of Corrections. Senator Ted Nelson and Governor spokesman Mark Forbes today traded barbs over the issue, and the governor himself issued a strong statement suggesting the recent escapes may have been politically motivated, and he ordered the Attorney General's office and the police department to take over the prison escape investigation.
Rumors of a mass escape at DOC are flying fast and furious this week. They prompted the police department to dispatch a special detail to guard the perimeter fence today. And they also prompted Senator Ted Nelson to visit the facility this morning, after which he announced that the situation there is like a powder keg waiting to explode.
I visited all the units, and I talked to these guys, and
there's something that perhaps being told up there there's going to be a mass escape. And of course, the enforcement rapid unit, special unit of the Guam police are up there on the perimeter waiting for something to happen. But I feel really that it's a powder cake up there. And I certainly feel that the governor must do something immediately.
What the governor did today was order the Attorney General and the Guam Police Department to assume full control of the escape investigation currently underway at DOC.
There is a bizarre circumstance happening here where DOC, which has not had escapes to the extent that it is having very recently, suddenly has them. Suddenly we have this epidemic of escapes going on, and the governor wants to know why. Why now? What's going on?
Why can't Internal Affairs handle this themselves up there?
Well, quite frankly, the governor wants to make sure that the people that conduct the investigation are impartial and uninvolved. If people that work at DOC are solely responsible for the investigation, the governor's concerned that people are going to do things to make sure they hold on to their jobs.
And I am sending a letter to the governor to declare emergency in order to have the structural construction be completed as soon as possible. With emergency declaration, we'll waive the bidding bids, we'll waive the GSA requirement, and I'm pretty sure that we can rectify that in a short while.
There's no reason to declare a state of emergency. I think that especially with the extra complement of GPD personnel who aren't involved in the prison, who aren't guards themselves, guarding the perimeter, I think we're going to make sure that no one gets out, regardless of anybody's plans to do so, whether they be on the inside or the outside.
Nelson's letter to the governor described his tour of the facility this morning, calling conditions there deplorable. The Department of Corrections and Public Works, wrote Nelson, have not acted in the best interest of protecting our people. The senator called on the governor to immediately exercise his transfer powers to direct funding to the correctional facility.
I guess his visit to the prison must have unhinged Senator Nelson a bit because his memory has obviously evaporated. Senator Nelson took away the transfer powers just like the rest of the legislature did for this particular budget year. The governor has no transfer powers, and I'm shocked that Senator Nelson has forgotten that.
Meanwhile, the governor's release quoted him as saying that the frequency and the timing of these escapes makes me highly suspicious. It is ridiculous for so many escapes to occur in such a short period of time, said the governor. Something funny is going on here. Add also said that he has heard reports that prison breaks are being planned to occur on a weekly basis in the immediate future.
If it should be something like politically motivated, then that's almost too awful an idea to contemplate.
But that's certainly what you're implying in the release.
Well, I think what we're saying in the release is that there may be other motivations, there may be any kind of motivation.
An attempt to embarrass the administration.
Perhaps. But regardless, whether it's an attempt to embarrass the administration, whether it's an attempt by DOC inmates just to basically, you know, who knows what, whether it's just simple negligence on the part of individuals up there, whether people are literally just falling asleep on the job, who have a specific responsibility to look at these people and to make sure they're in their cells. The bottom line is the governor doesn't believe that what we've got here is a major facilities problem. He thinks we have a problem that is specific, and he wants to see that specific problem tackled.
DOC spokesman Max Slavitt today said that Director Rick Salas welcomes the help of the police department and the Attorney General's office. It will mean no one can say we whitewashed the investigation, said Slavitt.
And in a related item, DOC spokesman Slavitt says the media has been fair in pointing out problems linked to the recent prison escapes. But he adds the media has fueled concern that the whole place is, quote, messed up. DOC officer Slavitt says the department has been, in his own words, finding where the ouch is and putting on a heavy-duty bandage to heal the situation. In his weekly newsletter, Slavitt says morale is low at DOC because, and again, these are his words, people in the community believe what they read, hear, and see in the media. Wrote Slavitt, there is no place for backbiting and gossip, which breeds defeat, disunity, and distrust. He did not elaborate. His column comes in the wake of 2 multiple escapes from DOC within the past 2 weeks and a legislative inquiry into the operations of the prison.
Last week, Frances Cabrera went back to Superior Court in Saipan. She asked to change her plea in a case that saw her convicted and sentenced for embezzling, a case involving her work at the Commonwealth Utilities Corporation. Now, 2 more criminal defendants in the CNMI are seeking to take back their court pleas as well. Edwin Santos, a Saipan taxi driver, is accused of the stabbing death 10 days ago of a young Japanese tourist. Authorities say Santos admitted to repeatedly stabbing the 23-year-old woman in what court documents revealed was a drug-related incident. Santos came back into court pleading not guilty today. Then there's the case of Masaru Simon, a Saipan police officer accused in the pistol shot slaying of his wife, who was also a officer. Last week, Simon waived his right to a jury trial, but now he's changed his mind and wants to be judged by a jury. He'll get his wish a week from next Monday. Cable News has learned that Simon will mount a defense related to his mental stability. Simon is accused of shooting his wife in the face in a jealous rage after he allegedly discovered her long-standing affair with an inmate at the prison where she worked as a guard. The inmate, upon hearing of the woman's death, hanged himself in his cell.
Commonwealth Governor Larry I. Guerrero says he has ordered Saipan police to do, as the governor put it, whatever it takes to get the job done to stop threatening harassment and property damage against reporters for Saipan Cable News. In a letter to Acting General Manager Ernie Galito, Guerrero said, quote, "It is deplorable that any person or any family in our community should have to put up with the type of harassment your people have seen." Galito appealed directly to the governor after a Saipan police officer told the Saipan Cable News reporter it would not be wise to report on activities of the Commonwealth Police, which has been followed by nearly 24 terrorizing phone calls threatening life and property, and also the slashing of 3 sets of tires on a Saipan Cable News vehicle. Said Guerrero, "I'm sorry about this. You can be sure I will do all I can to put a stop to it." The CNMI chief told Galito that he had ordered his public safety director, Greg Camacho, to double his efforts to bring the problem to an immediate halt.
U.S. Health Secretary Dr. Louis Sullivan says his Food and Drug Administration is willing to review any scientific data which would tend to prove that chewing betel nut harms no one's health. The FDA presently holds that betel nuts pose, in its words, potential risk to health, and therefore it has banned the importation of Micronesia's favorite nut. In a letter to Guam Congressman Ben Blas, the secretary said any evidence which tends to refute the current FDA policy on betel nuts will open the door to lifting present restrictions on its importation. Guam Senator Dr. Ernesto Espaldon, who huddled with FDA officials in Washington last summer over the ban, has been preparing data on pugwa, data which he says scientifically will eliminate any notion that consumption of pugwa harms a person's health. Blas said today he is pleased with the Secretary's posture on the issue. He adds that he has faith in the objectivity of the FDA's review of Espaldon's material.
At the same time, Cable News has obtained a copy of an in-house Navy communications letter which states that betel nuts contain no prohibited substances and could not trigger a positive reaction in any tests for the presence of THC, that's tetrahydrocannabinol. The 1983 letter from the Navy's Investigative Service Regional Office in Hawaii said, in these words, "There are no federal or naval regulations governing the use of the betel nut." The Agriculture Department does frown, the letter said, on exporting the nut in the husk because the husk may carry certain insects, but there is no regulation on the nut itself.
I gotta hit my retros and get back to tamooning. Hi, folks. Oh, Super Chicken. It's Merry Christmas before Christmas because we just got in a load of Eagle Talons and Plymouth lasers, and we're going to continue that big sale we had last month with the big factory rebates. Let me tell you, nothing down with your good credit. We'll take anything in trade paid for or not. Hey, we got to have some pigs and chickens and stuff for this Christmas party we're going to have for the kids up at Brody. So bring down your pigs and trade them in on these beautiful cars. And listen, we'll take your old car and trade whether it's paid for or not. We'll give you a beautiful watch that, hey, everybody will think it's a Rolex. It's a beautiful 18-karat gold layered watch that says, "We love you, Guam," right across the front of it. And it is gorgeous with every sale. And remember, when you come down to Chicks, take a look at the used cars that's being traded in on these cars if you need a second car. And remember, we give groceries from Payless and a beautiful watch with every one. We love you, Guam.
Welcome to the award-winning Cable News with the latest local, national, and international news, weather, and sports information. Now the most comprehensive news organization on Guam and in the Northern Marianas, the Cable News Team.
Both candidates for Lieutenant Governor come under fire tonight. Good evening, I'm Farland Chang. Welcome to Cable News.
Half a day, I'm Jane Flores. Thanks for joining us tonight. 2 Guam residents have filed a $30 million Superior Court lawsuit against Lieutenant Governor Frank Blas for what they claim was an unauthorized land exchange to a prominent Guam family.
The petition was filed late today by Enrique C. Baza Jr. and Michael J. Davis on behalf of themselves and, quote, the people of the territory of Guam. Now, the suit grows out of a 1988 action in which Blas, as acting governor at the time, signed off on what the petition claims was a swap of government-owned land for government-owned land, but in which the Cristobal family benefited to the tune of at least $12.5 million worth of property. The land itself is located in the Tumon area of Guam. Specifically, the suit says Lieutenant Governor Blas knew or should have known that land the Cristobal family sought to exchange was not family property, but in fact government property. The suit, which seeks a jury trial, claims that given current market prices, the people of Guam lost an estimated $30 million in what it says was an illegal transaction. Attorney General Elizabeth Baird Anderson, Land Management Director Frank Castro, the now fired Land Management Administrator Joseph B. Cruz, who is under multiple indictments growing out of an unrelated land swap, and Rufo J. Lujan, a former business partner of the Lieutenant Governor.
Also this evening, the man who sent a highly critical letter to the local media about the Ramirez estate spoke with cable news today. Jose T. Flores says that between 1952 and 1984, he and other members of his family had leased land on what is now considered the Ramirez estate. Flores said that everyone in the estate measured only 30 hectares and that he was shocked when he was told he must move off the land in 1984. Flores said that the man who told him he had to get off the land was Lieutenant Gubernatorial candidate Jose Ping Duenas. Flores spoke with Kevin Kerrigan this afternoon. He declined to let cable news photograph his face, but he did agree to let us record his voice.
This is the letter that Jose T. Flores sent to the media yesterday. His signature, address, and phone number included. The letter is highly critical of the role Flores says Lieutenant Gubernatorial candidate Ping Duenas played in the expulsion of at least 12 families who were leasing what they thought was Gov Guam land on what is now considered to be the Ramirez estate.
My father, back in the 1952, we started leasing a land up there in Chagrian, and we practically grew up there with all the hardship that we put in, and a lot of hard work. Everything is being done by hand. We leased this particular area from the government of Guam.
You thought all along you were living on Gov Guam land?
That's right.
And Gov Guam thought you were, that was government of Guam land, public land up there too?
I believe that when the government of Guam issues out receipt, whenever you make payment, and it says right there on the receipt, government of Guam land lease, you know, there's no other way that I could think any different.
How did you?
This gentleman told me himself, Jose Ping Duenas, told me himself that I have to leave that place because all those areas right there belongs to them.
This was 1984?
1984.
What was your reaction to that?
Well, my reaction to that, I was shocked to hear that, because for so many years we paid the government for this leasing of that land up there.
The court said it was his.
Well, I would never accept that.
Why not?
Because of the fact that why did he just now come out and presenting this to the people after so many years that it was leased out to, and only to find out in 1984 that that was his property? Well, I find that very doubtful in my mind that it was even ever his property. These family never owned any larger than 30 hectares of land up there. And only to find out that it grew for so much in such a short time.
Do you think that they encroached or expanded on the government of Guam land?
Well, that could be the right word for it.
Well, what's your word? What would you say?
I would say that, in simple English, I would say that he stole from government land.
Who?
The Ramirez family.
Why do you not want your picture taken?
Well, I feel that if needs be, if I have to show myself on camera, I will. But before that time, I will like to be off camera, because of the fact that I have already presented myself, and I'm a target for everybody.
Are you doing this for political reasons?
Absolutely not.
Why not?
Because I am a Democrat myself. And no one tells me to bring these out to the public, but just seeing this individual out there on television, just trying to give the people a total lie with regards to who he is and that he likes to help them. How can we allow, or I allow this gentleman to go out there and lie to the people?
Kevin Kerrigan, Cable News, Agana.
And former House Speaker Florencio T. Ramirez was contacted by Cable News today for his reaction to the sworn deposition statements made by surveyor Tommy Anderson. In the deposition, as Cable News reported last night, Anderson said that it was the former speaker as well as Lieutenant gubernatorial candidate Ping Duenas who pointed out boundaries of the Ramirez estate, boundaries which encompassed 155 hectares of land, despite records indicating the property measured only 30 hectares. Ramirez, who is a member of the Guam Election Commission, said at a meeting of the commission today that he would not comment about Anderson's sworn deposition. Although the former speaker is quoted in printed reports as saying that it was so long ago he doesn't recall. Yesterday, Lieutenant gubernatorial candidate Ping Duenas said he never met with Anderson or pointed out any boundaries to him when the survey was done. Also from Rosario Detention Facility, Tommy Anderson also denied making the remarks, despite the fact that he put his signature on the deposition certifying that he had read the contents and that they were accurate and true. And in response to allegations that the release of the deposition was politically motivated, the Attorney General's Prosecution Division today released a statement that reads, quote, "These accusations are unfounded and were made by persons who have made no effort to determine the circumstances which led to the disclosure of the deposition in question," end quote. The statement also says that it was believed that the deposition, which apparently contained sworn admissions by Anderson, had obvious value to our investigation and should be obtained immediately. However, the investigator who had previously reviewed the court file pointed out that it was sealed according to the records clerk. The decision was then made to unseal it according to the memo. The memo goes on to say, no person outside the prosecutor's office had any input in the decision to obtain this deposition at this time in this manner. And this release states there was no effort made to embarrass or discredit any candidate for office. In fact, states the memo, efforts were made in the course of obtaining the deposition to avoid having it disclosed. The memo also points out that the attorney for the Ramirez estate, Pete Perez, told prosecutor Andy Bonham that he had no objection to the release of that deposition.
And we want to make a correction to that first story about the lawsuit against Frank Blas. One of the plaintiffs, or one of the defendants, is Rufo Lujan. He is not a former business partner of the Lieutenant Governor, but he is indeed listed as a defendant. The Legislative Committee on Ways and Means heard testimony on a bill that has been dubbed the Northwest Territory of Guam Act. The bill seeks to open up hundreds of acres of land for unrestricted use and commercial development and stop the military from declaring it off limits to the civilian population. Jerry Lyons reports.
The land in question includes areas known as Retidian Spur, Orunau, and Janopson. Committee Chair Senator Carl Gutierrez is the author of 1671. Many of those testifying agreed with allegations that the military didn't condemn the land legally, did not pay proper compensation, illegally blocked off access to landowners by placing sentries on Route 3 near Potts Junction.
I think it's incumbent upon your group to start taking positive action. These people, I mean, if they want to do something to us, they'll have enough staff here to do it, believe me.
And one of the problems too with the military, and this goes beyond just the problem with the dump site, there is the turnover of personnel. There's no continuity, and I think this whole situation has not been made a priority. One commander and the wing takes over the problem. They don't resolve it, then there's a turnover, and it perpetuates itself. And I think the fact that it's not made a top priority, so that it's elevated at their headquarters level, whether it be in Hawaii at headquarters PACAF or Washington D.C., that they're essentially dragging their feet and providing us.
Well, give them some lead, you know. Give them some lead. Find them $1 million. Let them drag that with their feet.
I think
$1 million a day, or whatever.
Even the federal government is not above the law. I mean.
And there was a call by some for the media to walk through Guam's Northwest Passage.
And they would see the fact that there's no municipal services down there, and they could take a hike across the, maybe Kevin Kerrigan would be the one to do that, and if he came back at all, you know.
He could follow Tony Sablon in and, you know,
sure.
take video of that.
But the point is, Senator, these reporters who would like to do this kind of a service, I'm sure, can't get in any easier than you and I.
The Air Force has in the past said that sentries in the area are needed for base security. Written testimony from Admiral Select James Perkins today said he wants to help family members who have land in the area work out an equitable solution for easier access. In Agana, Jerry Lyons, Cable News.
Colonel George DiGiovanni, commander of Anderson Air Force Base, wrote Guterres a letter saying the Air Force is working with civilians to make land easier and working to clean up Urunau, which was littered and polluted by the military after World War II. Stay tuned, we'll have more news after this.
This special report tomorrow. Ben Franklin's Moonlight Sale, 6 to 10 p.m. Downy Fabric Softener, $3.89. Sapporo Ichiban Noodles, 25 cents each. 30-pound case of whole chicken, $19.99. 16-inch standing fan, $24.99. Men's Levi's 505 rigid jeans, $17.99. Men's Nunn Bush shoes, 30% off. Children's shoes and children's dresses, 25% off. All notions and patterns, beddings and rugs, 30% off. Children's wear, 30% off. Fabrics, 20% off. That's tomorrow. Ben Franklin's Moonlight Sale, 6 to 10 p.m.
011 Plus. IT&E now has a 1-minute minimum rate for fax messages. And the savings may surprise you. With EconoFax, you'll save up to 53% on short fax messages to the continental U.S. and Hawaii. Register your fax number with IT&E. And don't be surprised when you start saving money. We're the innovators.
Bad news, Pizza Hut pepperoni. Prepare to get picked on even more.
Why is everybody always picking on me?
Why? Because now you can get a pepperoni lover's pizza at a very pickable price.
Only $11.99 at your Guam Pizza Hut, and a second's just $5 more.
With 2 prolific filings of pepperoni packed between 2 extra heaping portions of cheese and a particularly low price, who can resist picking?
Why is everybody always picking on me?
You know why.
A fire in a concrete home? It actually happened to Louise Camacho.
Fire? I didn't expect that. The total damage was estimated by UIU for $27,000. I was given 1,200 cash within a few hours after the fire by UIU, and I was really pleased about that. That was for living expense. I think UIU is the quickest to respond. They are like their commercial.
At UIU, we never forget. We grow larger one customer at a time.
Garfield is back. Yes, Garfield is coming back to the Micronesia Mall this weekend, October 12th, 13th, and 14th. Garfield is back with a brand new show this Friday, Saturday, and Sunday only at the Micronesia Mall. For showtimes, call the Micronesia Mall.
Voter registration is up, but there are still less people registered to vote in the 1990 general election than in the one that took place 4 years ago. The figures were released during today's board meeting of the Guam Election Commission. In the 1986 election, 43,121 people had registered to vote, and as of last night, only 40,616 voters were registered, a difference of about 2,500 voters. What the commission does have an abundance of, though, is especially when compared to past elections, is precinct workers. 110 spots are filled, leaving only 2 vacancies. The board was also informed by Executive Director Henry Torres that his deputy director, Elaine Manglonia, has resigned due to an illness in the family. Board Chairwoman Gloria Nelson asked if that vacancy would hamper the Election Commission's operations. Torres said not at this time.
A group of young people known as the Chelus report some problems with high school kids who have committed crimes and burned themselves in the name of the group Chelus. The group's founder says many of these teens have never come to the Chelu meetings, but they wear the Chelu symbol, and wearing that, they have vandalized, burglarized, and sprayed graffiti, which parents and authorities blame on the group. Those crimes have prompted the founder to urge these young people to learn the true meaning of being a Chelu and to stay away from illegal acts. This group of young people call themselves Chelus. That's brother in Chamorro. They formed to remind people of the old way of life and to promote respect, unity, and understanding. Their sign of 3 dots symbolizes Chamorro chiefs Kapua, Gadao, and Matapang. But founder Angel Santos feels worried that some teenagers have gotten out of control by burning 3 dots on their hands and arms, based on a practice that a few adults had started to show their loyalty.
Now we're finding out that guys from different schools, GW, Sanchez, Antalan, they're starting the young teenagers are starting to burn themselves with the 3 dots on their arm. We did it as a show of a commitment to brotherhood. Now that the teenagers found out about it, they're taking it in the wrong. They've gotten the wrong message, and as a result, the vandalism that they're doing, everything they're doing, they're identifying our organization as being responsible for it.
Founder Santos says he does not support young people burning themselves and that his group condemns those who commit crimes in the name of the Chelus. He says they started out as a small group of young people from all over Guam, not just one village, all trying to bring back Chamorro culture.
My message to all the Chelus out there, the ones that never came to the meeting, is this: to be a Chelo, you do not need to burn yourself with the 3 dots. You'll only need to be respectful, be humble, and understand one another. And when we can do that, then be a real Chamorro, a true Chamorro, day by day.
To further stress the message, Santos says he hopes everyone tries to influence at least 5 people in a positive way. He says his group is starting that by cleaning up litter around the island on weekends. The 2 Korean women who were robbed and punched last Wednesday near the Inarahan pool got some good news today from the territorial grand jury. The jury indicted their 2 alleged attackers for robbery and attempted criminal sexual conduct. 22-year-old Benjamin Anthony Meno and 16-year-old John Dominic Uggan both remain in custody on $100,000 bail. They'll enter their pleas on October 17th. Assistant Attorney General John Glang says he'll prosecute this to the fullest extent of the law. The victims were among the first Koreans to come to Guam since visas were waived for that country.
The Nico Hotel in Tumon is now...
Keep the rebates going until they're all gone. So take a look at this beautiful Montero. Fantastic 4-door loaded with everything that money can buy, including twin air. And let me tell you, take a look at this beautiful love bus. There's only 11 left. Now, if you want a love bus, 7-passenger with captain chairs and all, that's it. Take a look at the car. In back of me right now is the beautiful Galant, the car of the year last year. And over to my right is that beautiful little Mirage. Now, I'm going to tell you something. We moved out one heck of a lot of cars last month, and we're going to move a lot more. But we take in a lot of used cars when it happens. We've got 86s and 87s for $2,000 and $3,000. We have 88s and 89s for $3,000, $4,000, $5,000, $6,000, depending on the condition. But I'll tell you, every one of them are guaranteed to run real good. And you get a beautiful watch that looks just like a Rolex with every one of them, 18-karat layered gold. We love you, Guam.
Welcome to the award-winning cable news with the latest local, national, and international news, weather, and sports information. Now the most comprehensive news organization on Guam and in the Northern Marianas, the Cable News Team.
Half a day, everyone, and thank you for joining us this Friday. I'm Jerry Lyons.
And I'm Ginger Cruz. Lieutenant Governor Frank Blas denies any wrongdoing in the lawsuit against him and 4 other one-time GovGuam officials.
That's right, Ginger. Blas and 4 other officials are being sued by 2 private citizens for $30 million. Those 2 men, Enrique Q. Baza Jr. and Michael J. Davis, filed suit late yesterday for damages and a demand for a jury trial. They allege the officials improperly exchanged government land, and the prominent Cristobal family ended up receiving millions of dollars of land at the taxpayers' expense. As Farland Chang reports, Frank Blas thinks the lawsuit has no merit, but the plaintiff's attorney, Hayam Habib, thinks he has a good case.
I think it'd be... Lawsuit charges Lieutenant Governor Frank Blas with improperly signing a deed of exchange and thus illegally giving away more than 10,000 acres of GovGuam land in Tumon to the Cristobal family. Attorney Haim Habib says Blas knew or should have known this was wrong.
He wasn't authorized to do it. He gave away an approximately $30 million worth of property, and that breaks down to about $500 per taxpayer. That's it. We want the money back.
The lawsuit argues that it all starts back in 1957, when the Cristobal family agreed to exchange some of their land with Gov Guam. The family deeded its land to Gov Guam, but Gov Guam failed to deed its land to the family. The exchange never went through because the two parties failed to meet certain conditions, as stated in their agreement. Things like someone surveying the lands and someone mapping and registering the lands in land management. The family never sued Gov Guam, so the lawsuit states the family never had true claim to the land. Even though the family got cheated in this first deal, Habib says by law, if there's still no official exchange after a certain number of years, the family forfeits the land and Gov Guam gets to keep it. But Habib says in 1988, Frank Blas signed the deed of exchange, treating that Gov Guam land as if the Cristobals had owned it. Blas signed the deed, which in effect gave the Cristobals more than 10,000 acres of public land in Tumon, plus 2 lots in Ipan. All that in exchange for land which, the lawsuit claims, the Cristobals never legally owned. In other words, Habib says, the deed exchanges public land for public land, with the Cristobals allegedly getting much more Gov Guam land than they should ever have been entitled to. The Cristobals later sold that Tumon land for $12.5 million to Japanese buyers, which Habib says has now increased in value to $30 million.
If the government of Guam still had title to that property, the government could have sold it for approximately $30 million, and you divide it by the number of taxpayers, and you see that it's $500 per taxpayer.
In response, Lieutenant Governor Blas says the lawsuit has yet to be served on him, so he cannot respond to specific charges.
So the legal points that were raised, I'm unfamiliar with. I'm only familiar to the extent that what I hear on cable and what I read in the papers, but I really don't know what their legal arguments are. What are their allegations?
Blas did say he had voted against the exchange twice when he was a senator. He didn't recall why, but he said the exchange was attached as a rider to another bill. Regardless, Blas feels he did nothing wrong as acting governor.
When it got to my desk, it was a matter of the governor saying, everything, this is law, the AG has approved it, the Director of Land Management has approved it, I sign it as the acting governor. You know, Farland, this is the law. I'm not above the law. No one is above the law. I executed the law.
Whether Blas executed the law properly when he exchanged government land is a question that Haim Habib now wants the court to decide. In Adelup, Farland Chang, Cable News.
Besides Blas, those others named in the suit include Attorney General Elizabeth Barrett Anderson, Land Management Director Frank Castro, now fired Land Administrator Joseph B. Cruz, and former Land Director Rufo Lujan. In her response, the AG criticized the suit. She says if the plaintiffs believe the transfer was illegal, then they should challenge the law instead of suing the officials who merely acted in accordance with it. She adds in these words, quote, the unprofessional manner in which this lawsuit was commenced and its rush to the press causes us to question the suit's true purpose just a bit. Well, the Lieutenant Governor says that he's not sure of the suit's motivation, but he did raise some questions about those suing him.
Haim Habib and Francis Gill are practicing law in the same building. Rick Baza, Enrique C. Baza, was one of the guys who was supposedly pushing your cameraman around when Francis Gill was being arraigned for fraud. Many of the people of Guam, if not all, know that Rick Baza is a close relative of Ping Dueñas. And incidentally also, and it's ironic that the acting lieutenant governor at that point in time, Senator Franklin Quirigua, who signed the same document which I'm being sued for, is not a party to this suit. I wonder why.
Attorney Haim Habib denies any politics in this, but he says even if it is true, the real question is whether anything illegal took place, not whether someone has political motivation.
It is not true because this litigation, the process, the research commenced Thursday of last week, and that was before any of us heard about any problem that Ping Dueñas is having. I certainly did not know about it. Finally, I'm involved in a lawsuit against Ping Dueñas concerning Lot 10102. You know, I sued him long before any of this stuff came up. So, I mean, I don't think anybody could accuse me of being his friend or a supporter or what have you. And I'm not. And neither are my clients, to my knowledge.
One clarification in this story, we mentioned the amount of land exchanged in Tumon was 10 acres. That is not true. The actual amount is 10 square meters. The AG's office will file an appropriate response to the complaint in this case after the plaintiffs actually serve all the defendants in that case.
Attorney Oliver Bordallo argues that government land leases are not proof of public ownership of a piece of property. Yesterday, Jose T. Flores told Cable News that he and other family members had leases from the government of Guam on portions of what is now the Ramirez estate. Flores argued that those leases are proof that the property now in private hands is public land. But earlier this week, Bordallo, who accompanied Lieutenant gubernatorial candidate Ping Duenas to a Wednesday news conference, disagreed. Bordallo defended the Ramirez title to the controversial Jigo lot and cited the recorded history of the property to support his case. Although, as Kevin Kerrigan reports, Bordallo neglected to mention a number of important facts.
1987.
Attorney Oliver Bordallo accompanied Lieutenant gubernatorial candidate Jose Ping Duenas earlier this week at a news conference during which Duenas denied ever having met or directed surveyor Tommy Anderson to set the boundaries of his family's estate. Bordallo argued that the media had misrepresented the property's recorded history and he wanted to set the record straight.
I think that the public has been given only half of the facts, and that is why I propose now to attempt to set the record straight, or at least to give my interpretation of what the records at the Superior Court show regarding this land registration.
Bordallo started with the controversial map. He said it was a Candido Castro map.
According to the court's files, a land registration map was prepared in 1974 by Candido Castro.
It is true that this map is signed by Candido Castro. It was his survey firm. But this is not Candido Castro's work. It is indicted land surveyor Tommy Anderson's work. Not mentioned by Bordallo is that the record shows that the Ramirez family signed a contract with Anderson alone to do this map. And Anderson has stated in a sworn deposition that he not only did the work, but the family lent him $30,000 to do it. Anderson was merely employed by Castro at the time. Bordallo also referred to the recorded size of the property. The first record is a 1900 possessory information title on estate 812, now known as Lot 1010-2, the Ramirez estate. Jose Borja declared his ownership of the property, and he declared he owned 30 hectares of land.
The record shows that there was no survey conducted when this was done, and that Mr. Borja estimated the size of his property at 30 hectares. He further stated, according to the government's own records, that the property, his property that he was claiming, which had not been surveyed, was bounded on all sides by mountains.
The record does show some of these things, but it does not show that Borja estimated the size of his lot. The record reads verbatim, it has an extension of 30 hectares. The word estimate is not found in the record. Bordallo acknowledged that for more than 70 years the Ramirez estate was carried on the tax rolls as being only 30 hectares in size, but he neglected to mention the 1915 deed of sale. That is when the property first entered the Ramirez family. And this document says that Jesus Ramirez Borja bought estate 812 from Jose Borja for $50 in a bull cart. It says that Ramirez Borja bought a lot, the description of which appears in the first record and is identical. That is, Jesus Ramirez Borja bought a property that has an extension of 30 hectares.
I think what you're doing is you're throwing out certain facts, certain records, without really providing a full explanation of the situation. And I think that's very unfair, and I think that's very misleading.
Bordallo also mentioned the land leases that were granted to people like Jose T. Flores and at least 12 other family members. Yesterday, Flores told Cable News that it was Lieutenant gubernatorial candidate Jose Ping Duenas who told him and other families to leave the land 6 years ago. Land they had been leasing for more than 30 years. Leave it because it was private property now.
The Attorney General based this assertion on, first, the fact that the government of Guam had previously issued land use permits for portions of the property to certain third parties, as if that somehow gave the government title, the fact that it allowed somebody else to use certain real estate.
Bordallo also referred to the 1960 government of Guam map, which he said was a 1961 map. This 1960 map shows the size of the Ramirez estate as being 38 hectares. This map played a key role in the government's subsequent objections to the Ramirez claim of 155 hectares.
In 1961, a map had been prepared by the government of Guam, which showed that the Ramirez estate's property was not 30 hectares, but was in fact 38 hectares. Where the government of Guam got the figure of 38 hectares is not indicated in their own map. It merely states that it is based on, quote, records from the Department of Land Management. No notice was given to the Ramirez family, or according to the records, there's no evidence any notice was given to anyone in the Ramirez family of that 1961 government survey. It is only signed by an official of the Department of Land Management, and no opportunity, as far as the records show, was given to anyone in the Ramirez family to object to that map.
But that is not a true statement. The map does indicate where the government got the figure of 38 hectares. It is clearly printed right in the center of this map that Bordallo claimed to have seen. The figure of 38 hectares came from the property owner himself, Jesus B. Ramirez, a member of the same family which, 43 years earlier, had bought 30 hectares from. According to the note on this map, Jesus B. Ramirez told the government surveyors that he owned 38 hectares, although the records show that he had been paying for only 30 hectares. Also, contrary to what Bordallo stated, the note on this map states that notice was indeed sent to Ramirez about the area he claimed, and that Ramirez received that notice in 1961.
And who is it signed by?
It's signed by the government of Guam surveyor.
Do you see Mr. Ramirez's signature on that map anywhere?
What's your response to that? Are you...
Well, I'm giving you my response. That is my response. I think
that the government of Guam surveyors lied or made that up?
Well, I don't see any competent evidence there. Why didn't the government come into court when they had the opportunity and try to convince the court of that?
That is one of the questions currently under investigation. Kevin Kerrigan, Cable News, Agana.
In a related development today, former Speaker Larry Ramirez issued a statement saying that Jose Ping Duenas had nothing to do with the land survey done by Tommy Anderson. Ramirez stated that as far as he knew, Ping Duenas had never even been involved with the property until over 15 years later. Ramirez said that Tommy Anderson may have mistaken Ping Duenas for Larry Ramirez's younger brother, Jose Ramirez. Yesterday, the former speaker declined to comment for Cable News, although printed reports quoted him as saying that it was so long ago he does not remember.
We want to make a clarification in a story. I made a mistake in telling you the correction before as the amount of government land involved in the Tumon exchange story to the Cristobal family. I should have said we reported 10,000 acres. The actual amount involved in the story, the correct number of square meters is 10,000 square meters, and we wanted to correct that. Surveyor Tommy Anderson went before the appeals board this morning to face a disciplinary hearing, but that hearing was postponed. Anderson was brought to the meeting from his cell at Rosario Detention Center, where he remains under a $500,000 bond on charges that he conspired to steal public land. The proceedings before the Professional Licensing Board, though, stem from a number of non-criminal complaints filed against Anderson by alleged co-conspirator Francis Gill. Shortly after Cable News first began reporting on the problems with land management, Gill filed 3 complaints with the Appeals Board against Anderson. The complaint the Appeals Board was scheduled to address today concerned lots 522, 521, and 503 new. As Cable News has reported, the Anderson maps on these properties were all voided on January 3rd of this year for gross surveying errors. All 3 lots were purchased by Fedco Limited, a firm Gill is associated with. Anderson today was accompanied by one of his new attorneys, Bob Torres. Torres took over from David Lujan yesterday and asked for more
resources of the office to make sure that every phone call is answered, every letter is answered, and that my time will be your time. I will be there to walk down the hall or down the street with you to help you and your families. You deserve nothing less. After all, it's your office.
Colonel Danny Santos, USMC retired treasurer.
I support the 5440 raise for all GovGuam employees. In April, I introduced Bill 1423 for the 5440 increase. During the July legislative session, I unsuccessfully attempted to get the raise passed as a floor amendment to another bill. However, I continued to fight for a raise for all of the government of Guam employees and managed to get the 5440 pay raise tacked onto another bill as a rider in the August session. You re-elect me your senator, and I will continue to fight hard for you.
The party of the people, the right slogan, balance and ping, that slogan that is very consistent with the democratic philosophy, sensitive to providing and uplifting the quality of life of our people. And it's the Democrats that have done it before. It's the Democrats that's going to continue to do it. So let's put all of them into office in this coming election. People together for Guam first. It is the party of the working man.
Ramon Pseudo Treasure, Box 1458, Agano.
Welcome to the award-winning cable news with the latest local, national, and international news, weather, and sports information. Now the most comprehensive news organization on Guam and in the Northern Marianas, the Cable News Team.
Good evening and welcome to the Sunday edition of Cable News. I'm Farland Chang. Thanks for joining us tonight. Congressman Ben Blas reports making progress on federal constraints on land use and development here in Guam, and in particular access to private lands in Urunao. He announced today that the Departments of Interior and Defense have agreed to set up a joint task force with GovGuam and local private landowners. Those landowners include the original owners of Urunao in the northwest, the Artero family. During wartime, the military took over their land. Other private lands include Retidian Point and Janapson. In order for landowners to get back access to their lands, Blas thinks this new task force will help to lead the way.
So far, it's always been the feds are saying this, the owners are saying this, developers saying this, and so on and so forth. I'm trying to get everybody to the table and say, okay, what is it that you really want? Because after working with the feds for the last two months on this issue, I get the feeling that they would like to just say, maybe we can sit down and everybody can be accommodated.
To solve the land conflict, Blas says the task force idea came up after he met with Interior Secretary Manuel Lujan and Interior's Director of Fish and Wildlife during the past 2 months. He says the panel will be made up of representatives from Defense, Interior, GovGuam, the legislature, and private landowners. But Senator Carl Gutierrez thinks it's just another federal attempt to delay. He sponsored a bill to offer relief to landowners.
Go out and say, we've got another task force that will sit down and talk about this. This is beyond the talking stage. I think that the military should just go ahead and accede to the law that mandated them to resolve this problem.
Blas says he wishes it was that easy. He says the issue is not Guam dealing with the U.S., but rather Guam and the U.S. dealing with environmental groups who want the land preserved as critical habitat. Blas says the U.S. agencies want to help, but they don't want to be sued, so they're being careful.
Willingness on anyone's part of the Department of Defense, to my knowledge, at least the people I've talked to the Department of Defense on this thing, there's willingness, but there is this critical habitat designation. So what we're taking all the parties together and say, okay, how much is needed for this, how much is needed for that, that is in terms of acreage, and let's see what we can do to everybody. Everybody wins. This is what we're trying to do here.
Blas says the task force may be meeting in Guam or Hawaii, depending on whether members can make it. Iraq's foreign minister has said nothing about pulling out of Kuwait, but he is saying that Persian Gulf crisis now has entered a new phase, one of reconsideration and reassessment. Tariq Aziz met with King Hussein and other Jordanian officials today. He says Iraq is looking for a comprehensive and just peace. This statement comes as Israel is criticizing the U.S. for its lack of support on a UN resolution which condemns Israeli use of deadly force. Last Monday, police shot and killed 19 Palestinians at the Dome of Rock, a Muslim shrine. It happened after an Arab crowd threw stones down onto Jewish worshippers at their shrine, the Wailing Wall. Palestinian groups say the UN resolution does nothing to protect them from future violation, while Israelis reject the measure, saying it ignores the Palestinian role in provoking the violence. Now, just over half of Americans in a Newsweek poll feel Israel's slaying of 19 was uncalled for. And also a CBS New York Times poll shows that President Bush is slipping in popularity. The 60% overall approval rating is the lowest of Bush's presidency, but it's still higher than Presidents Carter and Reagan had at their point in this term, or during their term at this point. 52% disapproved of Bush's handling of the economy. There's also some slippage in approval for Bush's handling of the Persian Gulf crisis. That rating is down now to 57% compared to 75% just after Iraq invaded Kuwait. The House of Representatives will now debate a bill that would forbid teenagers from getting abortions unless at least one parent is informed. That bill passed the Senate yesterday. If it's enacted, the bill would be the first federal requirement that parents be involved in their children's decision to abort. In an unscientific polling of a handful of local shoppers today, most of those with whom we spoke seem to support the bill.
It should go through, and it should be consented because the children they're young, they're not an adult yet, so I think it's okay.
18 years old for them still too young. If even their parents, I think they can make a decision for them.
I mean, they do have the right. I mean, they're your own parents.
But yeah, because ultimately it would be the parents who would support the child, right, if they did have the baby.
At that age, that they cannot make their own really good judgment.
They are not yet mature to know what is going on, really. You know, it means death or it means killing the baby.
Yes, I really believe that one parent should be involved because it's part of the family, and I think sticking together.
Well, to fight this parental consent bill, the pro-choice side has launched a series of commercials paid for by Planned Parenthood.
What a game, I mean, what a game.
Yeah, that'll be fun.
See you in class Monday, Julie?
See you on Monday.
Daddy?
I told you to be home at 10 o'clock, not 10:10.
If this is what he does when she comes home a few minutes late, what will he do if she tells him she's pregnant?
Well, don't start crying. I'll give you something to cry about.
Now, that bill is attached to a larger appropriations bill, which the House is expected to take up tomorrow. A 31-year-old Toto man remains behind bars tonight, facing various weapons charges. Police spokesman Officer Ray Fernandez says Guillermo S.N. Susuico was arrested at 10:20 last night at the Dallas Lounge in Tamuning. Fernandez says club managers feared one of their customers had a gun and decided to call police. When officers arrived, they approached the suspect and found that he had a small caliber pistol in his possession. Police asked the man for a permit, but Susuico had none to show. He was charged with possession of a concealed weapon, possession of a firearm without registration, and possession of a firearm without a permit. The Guam Federation of Teachers endorsed today 10 politicians who support their platform. At Adaloop, GFT members gathered with those who they think will support their agenda. Governor Atta arrived later, but among the 4 Democrats and 5 Republican candidates for senator who showed up were Tony Umpinko, Eddie Duenas, Conrad Stinson, Feo Valles, John Uggan, Tony Blas, and Carl Gutierrez. Members of GFT's Committee on Political Education, including President Bruce Caroli, say they have concerns that these politicians have promised to address on behalf of GFT's 3,000 workers.
A rise in inflation. The cost of living has gone in double digits for several years. We've been addressing that issue of raising salaries. We'd like to continue that. We see there's a need for the